Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our webinar about how to stop guessing for AI security. We're going to go through really how a mature AppSec program treats AI um, and give you some tools to check to where you are. I'm Jeff Martin, VP of Product GTM, and I'm joined by Robert. Robert, you can introduce
Hey,
yourself.
yeah. Hey, I'm Robert Nilsson. I'm the EVP of Customer Growth and Success here at Mend, and really glad to be here and talk about this important subject. It's something we've been talking about with our customers and frankly in our own company here, and it's a topic that is just accelerating. So really glad to be talking about how you can assess and actually figure out where you sit in maturity. Yeah. So anyway, Jeff,
Yeah.
looking forward to this presentation.
Well, here, let me go through the agenda just quick so everybody knows what we're going to cover. So we'll just push on to the next slide. We'll be nice and fast. We'll try to take this in 30, 40 minutes, depending on how much we talk.
Yeah, I'll
But
remember to keep slides.
so here's our agenda, right? First, we're going to set the stage. Okay. Just brief overview of why AI security has become such a big topic, even up to the board level this year. Honestly, last year too, but it keeps accelerating. And then Robert and I will walk through the maturity model we've built, which is aligned to all of the fun acronyms, right? NIST AI, RMF, OWASP, AIMA, ISO 42, whatever it is, and the EU AI Act. Um, and as we go through, feel free to throw questions in the chat. We're always glad to answer those as we go.
Yeah, and I'll be bringing a customer perspective, what we're seeing organizations struggle with, and what separates the teams and such on the curve. So yeah, we'll just kind of go through, and as Jeff said, yeah, ask questions, and we will respond as we go.
Okay, so let's talk about why now is different than before. Not in general, but with AI. AI adoption's increased obviously ridiculously dramatically. I mean, this is a number we pulled from somewhere, but all of us know AI adoption has gone through the roof, right? 72% of enterprises are now running AI. That's probably 100%. Um, just I wonder how many people are running things they aren't aware of. But with all this new AI stuff, a huge chunk of the AI generated code, whether it's from a coding assistant or from having Gemini create your app whole, um, has security flaws. These aren't intentional, of course. These are weaknesses that are basically getting repeated from all of the data that the AIs were trained on, which is, of course, mostly open source, as well as just normal structural weaknesses from combining different functions, etc. So we have all these problems, and traditional AppSec tools aren't really built to create them, and traditional AppSec programs aren't built to catch them and handle them either.
Yeah, and what we hear from customers constantly is that they need to be doing more, but they just don't know where to start. And I liken this back to when kind of AppSec hit the scene, right? And we were developing ways of measuring that and those matured into full programs. And the same, we're at that same place now. We're at the beginning of this, and not only is this more important than even when we started AppSec, but it's more complex, right? Because now anyone in an organization can write code. I mean, there's so many things happening, right? I mean, if you look at what probably, looking at now, maybe 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, when Opus 4.6 hit, um, it was a cataclysmic change, right? I mean, it really crossed that line from AI assisted development to AI the developer, right? And so this becomes even more important because we're not looking at the code in such detail. So how do you actually start managing those programs and make sure that the code continues to be secure? Because what we do know for sure is AI is not that concerned about security in its code.
No.
Yeah.
And most
So
AppSec programs are actually focused on, well, the traditional people process tools, right? And the
yeah,
people have just disappeared. That's the
exactly.
biggest
Yeah.
switch. So, okay. So we know the pressure is building from internally and outside. We got these new AI acts going, and this is the question everybody is really asking, right? I hear it. I'm sure Robert, you hear it. Um, a variation of this. Are we secure enough to use AI appropriately? Are we treating AI in a secure manner? Are we using AI securely? There's 100 ways to phrase this, but the question keeps coming up.
Yeah. And this is a really important thing. You know, when you go look for funding projects, all these things internally, if you don't know the security landscape, or there, I mean, and there is a lot of fear out there, right? What is this AI going to do? What's it connected to? What's our exposure? Everything from, HIPAA to, all your, random, many things that you've got to be compliant with. um, you've got to have a story. And, because AI can take a, mind of its own, so to speak, where is that data? And even down to, even your simplest term, you give any employee access to, Claude desktop. You've got to make sure that you know that you're not exfiltrating data into Claude's, big AI cloud, right? So there's so many aspects of this, and then obviously just the whole tool chain of development and such. So yeah, it's a big issue.
And look, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of frameworks out there right now. And here's the problem. They were all written by people who write frameworks. So they're all 300 pages and have multiple clauses and different sections, and nobody reads the whole thing. And they don't really give you good guidance on where to start. So that's what we designed this AI security maturity model to do. Security maturity is always hard to say. Bear with me. But the AI security maturity model um, is designed to give you a cleaner, easier to understand path to being going from how do we do this at all? I don't even know what I'm talking about, to being able to communicate it upwards, and finally really, controlling this risk without trying to align to 500-page docs and without trying to keep pace with the 300 different standards and frameworks that pop up every 3 weeks. This is based on four of them. There'll be another five, in the next year.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what's great about this, and I say, if you look at security in general, right? Security is a journey. Back when we you look at the previous technologies, right? I mean, the first time you scan an application with SAST, it's going to have issues. I mean, it's never security's never seen this thing before, right? But you can't just say, okay, yeah, fix it. You've got to take what's most important, address that first, and then keep going up the chain, right? And that's what this model's about, right? Is you start, a lot of customers are going to be in emerging or developing, which is perfectly fine, right? The whole point is to master each step, get it under control, and then you can move up and continue to increase your security maturity as boy, I'm really saying that great. But
Isn't
anyway,
it? It's hard to say out loud.
yeah, yeah.
I
Security
named it. I don't know
maturity
what I was
model.
thinking.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone mature on this call, but on this webinar, but yeah, on our side. But no, but seriously, it is a process. And as long as everybody accepts that and realizes it's a process, this gives you a great framework to work with.
And I'll be honest too. I think even if you were to apply this similar model to AppSec, traditional AppSec, the number of people keep falling off as you go each step, right? I would actually say that very few people are leading, because it requires a ton of focus, a ton of time, and a ton of care that isn't always necessary for every application. So one important thing to keep in mind is, your end goal might be controlling, um, but you really don't want to be in emerging and developing. You want to get moving and progressing to the next step. All right, so let's just dive in a little bit on each stage. Um, Stage one, emerging, right? This is that ad hoc, we're not very mature yet. Most companies are here right now. I'd argue almost everybody who's not a big enterprise. And it's not because they're, negligent or they don't care. It's because AI moved faster than governance can. You just can't keep up. So,
Yeah.
what this looks like is really lack of formality, lack of, maybe you understand what you have, but only in most general sense.
Yeah, and I talk to leaders every day who are at this stage. You know, they know AI is out there, it's in their organization, but they don't really have a good feel for it, right? So when you look at your overall, development environment, right? You unless you have good visibility, a way to actually, expose these things, you really couldn't possibly know what an individual developer is doing or a team brings in, right? You've got to have something. And so yeah, you always start at, how do I get the visibility I need? Those sorts of things, right? Because it's the first step, just the scope. What is happening, right? And yeah, that's where this begins.
My first name for this phase was actually unmanaged. And then I decided that was too negative sounding. But that's really what it is. This means you're not really managing your AI usage. So what do you do to start? Well, first thing is to know what you have, right? This is basic risk management. At the end of the day, everything in risk management starts with knowing what you have, and then knowing what the risks are in what you have, right? And if this sounds simple, it's because it actually is. It's very easy to say out loud, but it's a little hard to do just, you know, through wishing. You have to have the right tools to be able to create an AI bill of materials, to be able to capture and see all of the shadow AI that's floating around your company, these new apps that are being generated. Robert generates like 16 a day now. Somebody somewhere has to keep
True.
track of that, and it's not always Robert calling people and saying, "Hey, I created a new app this hour."
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I know that I need to be secure, so at least we have that going. But
Yes.
I'd also say on this, I talk to a lot of customers, and we have quite a few who say, we don't use AI, or AI is not allowed in our development, so we really don't need to, worry about this. But realistically, those customers may be the ones who need visibility in AI bomb the most, because without any sort of governance, it's very difficult to know what is there, and certainly to have such a policy, you have to actually be able to validate it's correct and it's being enforced, right? So, yeah, there's really, I don't think there's anyone, regardless of their policy, that doesn't need to have a solid inventory.
Absolutely. All right, but let's see what happens with you get a little bit past this unmanaged stage and you start getting into a real program, right? Developing program. You've defined some things, but it's still very, very reactive. You've made progress. You've got some of these policies like Robert was talking about. If you're doing it right, you've got an inventory of at least all the AI components in your application. But enforcement's a second problem, right? You can set all the rules you want. Making sure they're followed is the next step. But then when they're not followed, what do you do? I don't know, Robert. I always feel like this is actually the hardest stage to get out of.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tricky, right? Because, teams do think they're doing the work. They feel like things are going well, but, there's a big gap between policy exists and policy enforced. And, when you look at AI coding assistants, all those things, only approved tools, it gets pretty blurred when, somebody can simply sign up for ChatGPT and start running their own codex. So, yeah, so it's important enforcement around. And then also, I think there's a lot when you're looking at the developing stage. This is where you're starting to build the true awareness, right? It's one thing to have a prompt that says, you're gonna, when the customer asks for their customer ID, customer details, you should look it up in the system, provide it. Um, that's not a great prompt, right? It probably needs a little more about, context, and a little bit of what constitutes knowing they're a customer and which customer, right? So, even at the very lowest level, you've got developers throwing these prompts in the code that need to be viewed, and they need to start understanding what that means, right? Because you need, obviously, guardrails is a production stage way to protect, but you have prompt hardening, you have all these things that need to be happening, and you also need to know the models are safe, right? I mean, so there's a lot that happens in this developing stage where I think developers start to become aware of the risks and start to actually learn better behaviors. And obviously there are tools and systems out there that can help with that.
Yeah, and I think this is also where things like access control encryption, input output monitoring start becoming more important. An analyst I was chatting with the other day said it nicely, I think, which is increasingly we're treating AI like an employee, right? Especially as we start to talk about agents, et cetera. That means knowing what they have access to and monitoring it. It means seeing what's coming in and out from them, right? What's their input? What's their output?
Yeah.
I'm not saying AI is a
Yeah.
human. I'll wait for some court thing to say that. But um, treating it like a human isn't a bad idea. What data does it have access to? What permissions does it have? What is it doing with those?
Yeah, and I think yeah, this concept Jeff brought up. I mean, my wife's very concerned because I talk a lot about my coworker that I named. I named my Claude. I won't tell you what I named. But my coworker and my code worker actually built itself a friend, so that it uses to help. So yeah, this is. I mean, this whole concept. It's not just we start the overall you look at it as an employee, but the employees are looking at it as a coworker, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's quite an interesting transition we're going through for sure.
All right. So what does an even more mature, program look like? All right. So if the previous one was like, okay, you're managing some stuff, but it's very reactive, right? There's a vulnerability that pops up, you go handle it. Somebody breaks one of your rules, goes through a guardrail, you know, does something they shouldn't, you can at least react. Well, a proactive one, this controlling phase, that's where the significant real value starts showing up. Everything else is protective. This is actually pushing, right? You have a real governance program at this stage. You're doing continuous risk detection. You're doing things like system prompt hardening, documented processes. You can point at a piece of paper and say, this is how we use AI, and this is how we make it secure. Um, this one is
Yeah.
actually my favorite phase because I feel like most people live here forever. Um, yeah, I don't know, Robert, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean conceptually, right? You kind of feel like are you ever going to be done? You don't feel done, but you do have the controls. You're mature enough that you've got the right things happening, right? You do your quarterly red teaming, you do these things, but ultimately, what happens like between those tests, right? I mean, you've got all these things in place, but not maybe necessarily as operationally integrated as they should be or could be, right? Where they're more real time, right? But as I say, it's a huge stage that it's moving from here is a leap, right? There's a lot of work to get from here to the next stage, but yeah, so this is I think this is at least where you can say that you're doing all the right things, even if you're not doing them maybe as often as you need to or as deeply, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, right? Depth and frequency. This is, you've got the right practices, but are they consistent? Are they continual? Are they, you know, basically enough? And I think what happens is, if you stage one, people are like, oh crap, I'm just beginning. What am I doing? Stage two, they're getting a handle on it. Stage three, actually, people are like, oh my, I want to do more. This is the one that almost pushes them, right? They do a little bit, maybe they do quarterly red teaming, and they're like, how do I do continual red teaming so I don't have to deal with so much things at once? This is the do more phase, right? Keep getting pushed to do more things. It's also where you start seeing things like quantified risk instead of just saying, okay, this is a critical risk. Great. Now you start breaking it down a little bit more. You have an understanding, perhaps, that a critical risk in one application isn't the same as an even medium risk in the other application because it's dealing with PII, right? You start getting much, much more mature here. And then there's
Agreed.
the real fun phase, leading. So this is basically you've now made AI security an embedded capability of your organization. It's just part of your operations. It's not layered on top. It's not bolted on. It is part and parcel of how you start with AI all the way through how you monitor it. Um, this is the this is the hard one because it requires not just process and tools, but it requires actually a little bit of a mindset change. And you can't get here on day two. This, you have to go through those other phases and build all the confidence.
Yeah.
But I mean, Robert, you're the one who actually talks to more customers. What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, when you get to this stage, I think the most important thing is that we've moved from security as an audit function where, oh God, the red teaming test is coming, to it's part of just every day, right? It's part of your continuous, automated CI/CD pipelines. Essentially, we move from, kind of as I say, an audit mode to an actual accelerant, right? Where, you're actually driving things forward in these AI programs by giving immediate feedback, right? The best thing you can do for developers and anyone responsible for your AI applications is let them know immediately what's wrong, what needs to be fixed. It's top of mind. You keep moving. So you're not, coming back and refactoring or rewriting or redoing a few weeks later or at the end of the quarter,
Yeah.
but immediately and you can make your adjustments. So this is a huge, huge step and one that, if you get here, when you get here, changes that whole, matrix of, the security oversight and developer teamwork, right?
And look, incidentally, just off topic a little bit because we're mainly talking about security maturity model. But organizations that get to this phase get benefits on the quality side as well. It's just part of how it works, right? If you're constantly looking at how your AI is performing and what it's doing and how, yes, you'll be more secure, but actually the quality goes up as well. All right.
Absolutely. So
So
now
let's
the
talk a
big
little bit about
moment.
what we're seeing in the field, right? We covered the maturity model. Everybody's bored, but okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I think I think we should, kind of ground this in what we see when we talk to customers. Most common, obviously, state as we mentioned earlier, stage one and two, no inventory or just beginning that process. Already, they know AI's out there. They know there are coding assistants. Those are hard to stop these days. There are other AI powered tools, SaaS tools, the agents. Who knows what MCP your developer connected to do who knows what, right? But these things are happening every day and growing faster. And you're talking about developers, so they can be very creative. I mean, it's hard to box in someone who knows how to write code. But yeah, so the one of the fastest growing concerns, and I think the first and foremost thing is shadow AI, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and it's pretty important to realize that LLMs or some other AI capabilities are being built into your applications and where, and you may or may not want those technologies in there. And certainly you're going to want to know, is that a safe model we used? I mean, did we pick the right thing? Is there a is this model going to certainly start, is it going to start cussing at my customer or who knows, right? Or is it easily exploitable, right? So, shadow AI, I mean, just not even knowing what's there and having no idea, what's safe is kind of what we look at as a ground floor problem, right? You got to start there. And then, you get into compliance, right? You've got to be able to say, where am I using AI and what are my risk factors and how does it impact? I mean, how close does it come to protected sensitive data? How are you governing that? Are there hard controls that keep data exfiltration from happening? Because I'm pretty sure that the worst nightmare for every company is that one customer ends up with the data of another, right? I mean, these things are super easy with AI without the proper, structures and guardrails in place. And then, obviously, when teams move forward consistently, you know, a clear benchmark lets you know where you are. And then you also have an executive narrative that translates into business terms. So essentially, here's our posture, here's our roadmap, and here's the investment required. And I know that gets budget going. And obviously, in my life, with my job, this is my requirement for everything I do, and most especially AI initiatives, right? And so, and when you look at how AI impacts development, right? There is an investment to be made. And then, of course, generally speaking, there'll be long-term savings.
I think that's the biggest thing too, as we keep seeing more and more citizen developers, so to speak. That product guy who's never written a code but suddenly creates 3 apps one day. Um, that's the part that I think a lot of them forget. Everything has an investment. Everything has to be maintained. Everything affects your security posture. It's important to have that perspective on there that, an
Yeah.
executive is actually able to say what this is.
So, Jeff, what about the blind spots?
Oh, I love blind spots.
All
Look,
right.
no. Um, Robert just touched on a couple of these, right? Look, these are the biggest, big areas where that you're going to see the most risk if you're not, in controlling and leading. Um, so prompt injection, I think we all know what that is, right? Manipulating an AI model so that it does something it's not supposed to, override instructions, get leak data that it's not supposed to leak. You interject yourself in its output. This is just frankly invisible to basically traditional AppSec tools. It just is. It's not traditional AppSec isn't built to see the input and output in this way. So you need things like red teaming. Um, Shadow AI, Robert touched on it. You don't know what you don't know. If you don't know it's there, you can't manage its risk. And the fact that it's there is a risk by itself, even if it's not doing anything. But think about why people are creating this. They're creating it to use your data, your production data, almost certainly. This is the customer service rep who decides he wants to automate his job and ties into the entire customer database, but doesn't have appropriate safeguards to, not leak customers' PII. Um, Model supply chain risk. Software supply chain is a whole topic by itself, but this is a new supply chain. This is new components coming from new sources that go into your application. Um, that has all sorts of risks, um, as we keep seeing, not just embedded vulnerabilities, but embedded biases. In some cases, actual malicious behavior meant to exfiltrate your data. Um, that's happened a couple of times now, and I expect it to keep happening.
Yeah, I think the ones I hear about most from customers are around like hallucination drift and the lack of an AI register, right?
Mm.
Hallucinations aren't just embarrassing. In production system, they can be dangerous. And in fact, I was working with myself with a very large customer, I'm sorry, custom company, and I was discussing my contract for a TV service I was subscribing to. And the AI, after discussing it with me, recommended I drop their service and go straight to the company because it was clear that the company would provide me what I was looking for in a much better way, which I'm 99% sure was not the objective of the AI helper to take their business away. So yeah, I mean, it can cost you money. It can be embarrassing. We've seen a lot of that out there, and obviously, on the flip side, when an auditor asks you for, your AI register and you don't have one, that's a bit of an issue. And just a quick example, because Jeff touched on, prompt injection. When you look at what dev teams are doing, there are these concepts out there of kind of autonomous AI workflows where the AI is supporting itself, it's doing managing its Git issues and so on and so forth, right? There, I mean, this is becoming very realistic and very, very doable. However, imagine a publicly published Git repo with your, I don't know, open source tool or closed source, and you're just but allow customers to post their issues to it. Um, you could literally post a prompt injection and your AI would read it and pretty much do whatever it's told. And generally speaking, in a dev environment, the AIs are pretty free to do quite a few things, right? So these dangers are everywhere, and even the best intentions can result in some amazingly bad outcomes. So.
I mean, I just honestly, an aside here, I think it's actually funny how much of the AI problem sets are the same problem sets we have with people, right? When you hire somebody, you know, hopefully they know, but at least they're trained or told, hey, we use private GitHub repos. Don't put, our proprietary code public. Problem with AI is it's an employee you didn't hire, you don't know exists, he doesn't know the rules, you don't know what he's doing. It really does boil down to managing like an employee, access,
Yeah.
rules, identity. You have to know who they are.
And AI, if it's using, your Git login, which
Yeah,
it is because it's running the GH command, can reconfigure a repo before you know what's happened.
that's
So
right.
yeah,
It's
one
a really
misunderstanding.
fast employee.
Yes. Yes. One misunderstanding and you've just gone public, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's all right. So let's talk about regulatory frameworks, Jeff.
Okay. So I unironically love regulatory frameworks. I know like that's not a phrase people say. But
Is that even a phrase?
it is. It's a phrase. I actually think look, regulation is good. Especially the ones that are coming from our industry, because frankly, it gives people an idea of what they should be doing, right? It builds consensus onto what safe looks like across our whole, development community. Um, it's bad though because they're insanely complex. They're written by policy wonks and lawyers. I don't want to shade the people who work for the EU, but they're not usually real practitioners. Um, and then they put these big penalties on it, right? So look, the four that I think matter the most, and I'm actually going to go from like the least restrictive to the most. OWASP, AI maturity. This very good community standard, the kind of standards I really like, developed by us, basically, the community. Um, it covers a lot of the top threats and talks about how to handle them, but it's pretty nascent. NIST, US government, put out one as well. That at least gave some kind of a framework. Um, and federal and enterprise AI risk programs are structuring across this. And then you've got the ISO guys, the commercial standards, as I call it, since you have to pay them a fortune to even see the standard. And then now you've got the EU, and pretty soon California will get into the act um, of these very strict regulatory frameworks. We even have to report things to the government, right? So you've got mandatory testing, mandatory reporting.
Yeah, I think
And when
that
you get
the
to that, of course, the money fines.
Yeah, and the EU Act, I think, is the one that most customer. I mean, there's a lot of urgency here, and we hear that from our customers. And with enforcement starting in August 2026, which may sound like it's not that close, but that's pretty close. You know, any high risk AI has to follow, yeah, the documentation, monitoring, robustness testing, all of these things. So, I mean, if you don't already have your plan and you are covered by this you need a plan, and the maturity model can help you get there, right? Because this is all about getting ready for these sorts of things, and this is just the beginning. As Jeff said, California. I don't know if California will do its own regulations, but certainly, um,
They did with
you know,
privacy. I think we're gonna see this follow the same privacy
yeah.
arc.
Look,
But
there are going to be incidents, and incidents are going to drive more regulation.
yep.
This is how it works. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, all of this regulation happened without even a giant major incident yet. At least that's public. Um,
Actually, all these Amazon outages
ooh,
apparently were AI assisted, adjust changes to their environment, right? So
yeah.
I just read an article. They are now requiring human review and engineering sign off on all changes, AI or not.
I think I
So
read the same article. It's like
yeah.
even their most senior people who used to be, exempt from peer review are now like, nope, peer review for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really easy. AI is super smart and gives you really great answers that may have absolutely no relevance in your context. So yeah, it's really interesting, but also fascinating that Amazon got bitten by that at such a large scale. So
Yeah, they know what
yeah,
they're doing.
they
Um,
do. Well, I guess. I mean, they know their AIs don't know. So all
but yeah,
right.
so look, we tried to build this model so that it cuts across all of these, and there's like a little map,
Yeah.
um, because they're all important. So this is that 5 I'll call them control domains. I wrote it down. I should use the words I write. Um, but these 5 areas, right? These are the core, the pillars of any AI security program, right? You have to have governance and accountability, right? You have to know what AI you have. You have to write down some policies about how you want to use it. You can't just say, okay, we'll use AI for whatever. You have to say, here are the rules for connecting to product data. Here's how we have a register and how you get things in there, right? How, to the point we were just talking about, what's the human oversight of the AI, right? Well, maybe you need to do peer reviews or the equivalent. Um, you have to, of course, have that inventory and risk identification as well, right? That includes things like threat modeling at the more mature levels. You have to have the controls, right? Your guardrails, what's going in and out. Are you continually red teaming, right? Which is really checking for the behavior you want. Um, you know, do you have all of these checks embedded in your CI/CD pipelines, right? Not just run after the fact.
Yeah, and
Transparency. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Jeff. No, didn't mean
Yeah,
to talk over. Yeah.
I don't care.
You're right. You're still working your way through.
Yeah,
I
I
go
don't.
ahead. Yeah.
Um, like I say, I'm meeting sometimes. If you don't interrupt me, I'm just going to keep going. So, um,
Very true. Very true.
so look, transparency, life cycle insurance. This is one that actually I get questions a lot on. We did this giant internal survey when we were developing this. I shouldn't say internal, external survey, different CISOs, et cetera. And one of their biggest things is they wanted to make sure that when the AI made a decision, it was logged. Just that simple. What did it do and why? Um, Same thing. More advanced ways of scoring the risk, measuring risk, right? We have our AIWE weakness scoring we just came out with. Model cards fall into this category of life cycle assurance and transparency. And then finally, you got to prove it all. That's the whole point of these regulations, right? You have to have a plan, of course. You have to execute that plan, of course. And then you have to have all the documentation that you had a plan, that you executed it, and what the results are. So
Yeah,
sorry, Robert.
oh, no worries, no worries. I didn't mean to interrupt. So basically, our general recommendation to customers, in fact, a very strong recommendation is you can't do all this at once. You shouldn't try, right? You need to figure out where you're at, get the current stage under control, and just move your way across, and just, take it one step at a time because you've really got to have the solid foundations to keep moving forward. And there is just no way you can, big bang this, right? It's too many moving parts. And frankly, it's not just the technology, it's the workflows, it's everything. It's the teams, it's the education, right? There's a lot around this that you just, if you take it, one step at a time, you'll get there in a controlled and hopefully very safe and happy manner, right? It's kind of like you're gonna, take off in an airplane, right? You just carefully go through the checklist. Yeah, don't skip, or you might leave the flaps up, right? So,
Yeah, and we kind of give you a little cheat sheet on the next slide here, to just say like, okay, look, if you're, because please use the little test we created that we'll share at the end. But this is really the short answer for how to get from one spot to another. If you're emerging, don't really have much of a program, you have good intentions and little bits and pieces of the program. Um, Focus on visibility, get an AI bump, right? Going from developing to controlling, stage 2 to 3, automating your guardrails. How do you go from stage 3, controlling, to leading the best? It's continuous validation, right? So that's really the short and long of how to go from one phase to another.
yeah, and the move from controlling to leading, right? This is where the conversation shifts from confidence to proof, right? Leadership isn't just asking, "Are we doing security?" They're asking, "Can we prove we're doing security?" And the answer at that stage is yes, right? And that I think is a great message and shows a successful program.
Well, and of course, the best definition of a successful program is the boss happy, right? And in order to make the boss happy, you have to first have a business case with goals.
I
So
I don't know. I think I think the boss can become very unhappy if something goes horribly wrong, no matter how
yes,
happy he is in the so I'd
well, there
like
is that.
yeah, maybe that's a little I wouldn't quite use that as my bellwether. The boss is happy until the breach. So
I guess
yeah.
that's true. Every boss is happy if he doesn't have to pay for anything. But
Yeah.
but how do you make them understand? How do you make them understand that this is important if they don't already, right? And that's, you know, you have to make a business case. Like, let's just be honest. We all work in businesses. If you can't make a business case to somebody like Robert as to why we need to spend all this money and time's just money in a different form, and resources, and you know, putting these guardrails on our development, um, if you can't make that case, it doesn't matter how great your theoretical program is, it won't get executed.
Yeah. I mean, you've really got, four things you need, right? And where we are today, the maturity score gives you that. What our compliance exposure is, right? The framework, what's the roadmap, what does it cost, and versus what risk does it, it eliminates, right? So these are, you need all these parts, right? I mean, you're not going to get a program going, you're not going to get good, solid funding without being able to show the whole picture to the, leadership that's going to have to fund the effort, right? So the whole idea here is to essentially cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and have everything you need to move forward successfully.
And look, some of these ROI categories are a little squishy, to be honest, right? You know, Robert hit it. Um, Everybody's happy with their program until there's a breach, right? That's kind of a fundamental problem with risk mitigation and risk management is if everything's going well, you never have any problems. Um, but there are actual other ROIs for AI specifically, other than just breach reductions and the usual like, hey, we have to be compliant with this, new law over here in the EU. Um, the biggest one, in my opinion, is that it enables confidence in the AI adoption. Lack of confidence slows you down. It's hard to measure, but lack of confidence in how you use AI will slow your developers down.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, you have to look at this from the perspective that AI security, doing or setting up your program properly and all that. This isn't just something you're spending money on. It's competitive, right? I mean, the fact that you can talk about the program and mind and I from very personal experience, every time you open your mouth and say we use AI, your customers are like, okay, yeah, let's dive in. And then their legal departments are, let's really dive in. So this becomes a competitive advantage. I mean, if you have a great, solid program that definitely lines up, you can show maturity. You're going to have a leg up on a competitor who does not, right? And it's more than just a cost. It truly is a way to be competitive in this new marketplace. And I say with AI and the ability to convince your consumer that you are doing it right is going to become, number one, right? Because AI is in everything or will be.
All right, so we're wrapping up here. We got a couple closing slides. First, we've talked about it a bunch. Go do this. Go take the AI security self-assessment. It comes out, it's 20 questions total. I'm sorry, 15 questions total. Across all those domains I talked about, you get your score in 5 minutes. Like it's just yes, no questions. It's nice and easy. And it's a good starting point. It'll put you on that maturity model and it will tell you what you should focus on next. Like, here's the top 5 things you should do now. Go create model cards or whatever the right answer is for you.
Yeah, and what I like to tell customers, I mean, don't just have one person take it, right? Take it with your team. Take it individually, compare answers, and then, look at the varying, because not everyone's going to feel the same way about, where you're at, but it's going to surface a lot of assumptions, gaps, and so on, and perhaps ownership questions that just haven't been discussed yet, right? So it's a nice exercise too, and it's a conversation starter about this. Regardless of your maturity.
I love the ownership questions. I've been on calls where people do that and they're like, oh, I thought you owned that. No, I think you own that. Oh no, which of us owns this? Yeah.
Exactly. All right.
All right. Now, of course, we have tools to help, right? The four main ones I'll talk about for just a second because we're running out of time. Is of course we have automated tooling to help you generate your AI bomb, right? Models, data sets, MCPs, agents, all that. We now find system prompts for you as well that's embedded in your code that just came out.
Jeff, not only do we have that, but actually solving the base shadow AI is part of our core product.
Yeah. Um, I mentioned briefly system prompt hardening. Without going too far in depth, if you don't know what a system prompt is, it's the instructions for your AI. It's very important that it is a secure set of instructions, that set of instructions actually supplies some guards and rules. So we detect those system prompts and give you advice on how to make them better, harden them. AIWE scoring, AI weakness enumeration. Um, it's our proprietary way of scoring these risks that we're finding in the AI bomb and in the system prompt, all the AI risks. So it gives you a way of saying, okay, here's where we are. And if we fix this, we get this much less risky. Yep, better. And
Yeah.
then finally, automated continuous adversarial testing. Absolutely essential for AI, especially anything like a chatbot that has a lot of input output and can really drift. This is your double check, right? It's making sure you're not experiencing hallucinations and data leakage. It's an AI trying to break your AI.
Yeah, and I think this is where the most excitement is, right? I mean, getting there in stage three, having red teaming continuously running in your pipelines along, as part of your normal development process, making sure that, because the great thing and the bad thing about AI is your instruction set could remain stable, but the model's evolving. So even if you're comfortable today, the model's going to definitely change and change and change again, and those changes in the model will completely alter the output of the red teaming analysis and in fact probably drive continuous updates to your actual core instructions and protections.
I absolutely love red teaming too because it protects against things that aren't pure security, like Robert's example of the company that told Robert to leave it and stop
Yeah.
subscribing. That's a thing red teaming would pick up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not just data exfiltration. It's misbehavior, right? Doing things you don't want to do, saying things you don't want it to say, right? You just yeah, you want to make sure that your AI presents the same professional attitude and face that you would expect any customer facing employee. Yeah.
Again, we keep looping back to it, but treating AI like an employee, not being okay if it's swearing at your customers. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. And
Depending on
then
your business, maybe you like that,
I
right?
don't know.
Yeah, there could be an application.
There's a business case for everything.
Right. All right.
And then the last real slide here, just a quick summary, right? First, AI security is not optional. I think everybody on this call knows that, or you wouldn't be here. But it's really important, and it's important to keep repeating upwards in organizations. This isn't something that's, theoretical. It's not optional. It's not eventual. Get the EU AI Act kicking in August. This is a real thing right now that has to happen. Um, Most programs, stage one or two, that's okay. Start there. Pick your next couple of things you need to focus on, then keep moving up the chain.
And
Uh,
I'd say, just keep focused. This isn't just a, excuse me, this isn't just a benchmark. It really gives you a language and a narrative that helps you justify the investments you have to make to actually move the program forward, right? It's just a very practical way to approach the problem that gives you the tools needed to show both the plan and the, expected and desired outcomes and the path to get there.
and then the fourth is go take the survey. It's in the chat. It's on the slides. We put it everywhere. If you go to men.io, it's right up top, front and center. Um, that's because honestly, we really think it is the most useful way to understand your AI security program and its maturity. and it's very simple to understand. All right. So with that, I mean, again, do the survey. Um, but that's our contact information, and we're glad to take some questions. Um,
Yeah, just
yeah,
drop your questions in the Q&A panel, and while those come in, just say, really glad everyone attended, and we're also more than happy to set up time with you, Jeff or myself or one of our teammates, to discuss your results of the survey, any questions you may have, right? We're really excited about it, right? It's kind of a we're on the bleeding edge of the new era here. So everyone, including us, most especially, we're learning every day.
yeah. I mean, this is fun, right? Good luck, have fun.
Well, you haven't taken the survey yet. I don't know if I don't know if I'd say that's fun. I don't know.
People
I
like
did the survey.
surveys.
It's not fun, but it's useful. It's like fun
I
is
mean,
a whole
it's not
different
like
concept.
which Ninja Turtle are you, but it's fun.
It's
All right,
not
we.
the Netflix experience. I'll just say it. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so anyway, very much appreciate everyone's time.
Yep.
And obviously, this is one of the most important conversations going on in security. And as I say, we're glad you're thinking about it. And we are incredibly excited to talk to you more and learn more about your perspectives and the challenges you're facing. And so, yeah, by all means, drop your questions and reach out and let us know and what's on your mind.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.